Hello everybody, this is Revisiting. This new format is basically going to be a series of videos of me talking about my most recent playthrough of a video game. These videos are going to feature me ramble on in an informal manner about the focused upon game, so please do not expect a formal review of the game like what you see in Daulton reviews. As for the video games I choose to revisit in this series, the chances are, if I am revisiting a game, I see something in the software worth revisiting, whether it be that I'm feeling nostalgic, or I really like the video game, or if I think the game is one people don't normally play. Thus, I would be like shouting the game out or something like that. And today's game embodies all three of those reasons for me. This is Turok 2: Seeds of Evil. Originally released in 1998, Turok 2 was developed by the now-defunct Iguana Entertainment and was published by the now-defunct Acclaim Entertainment. Turok 2 is a first-person shooter that is based off of a comic book series called Turok, or sometimes called Turok Son of Stone. As for what I took away from this most recent playthrough, Turok 2 is still just as fun as usual for me. I had played this game as a child, but probably play it more now as an adult, and I'll get into why that is later. I revisited Turok 2 recently for a couple of reasons, mainly because I love the creativity of the direction around this game, as well as how fantastic the mechanics feel. I also find this game more interesting and satisfying than its predecessor, 1997's Turok Dinosaur Hunter, which I promise I'm going to revisit next. And finally, there is another reason which I will also talk about later on. Playing Turok 2, I feel like I kind of either learn or pick up on new things each time I play this game. For example, the Razor Wind and grenade launcher weapons actually ended up being a little bit more useful than usual for me. Normally I switch between two weapons. First is the Shredder. The explosive shells with this weapon have some devastating power in this game, and will kill mostly everything in one or two hits. Not to mention the Shredder's ability that allows shots to ricochet off walls, thus allowing these huge laser-like shots to travel around corners and off floors and ceilings. The Mag 60 is the other weapon that I primarily use, and it is also very overpowered. This weapon fires 3 pistol shots in rapid succession. The time between these bursts is very short, so the Mag 60 almost acts like the game's machine gun with the amount of damage per second you can get out of it. The other weapons in the game are very creative though. For example, the PFM layer is a great weapon for enemies that are close to the ground and like nip at your feet. The Firestorm Cannon is this Gatling-like energy weapon that takes a bit to warm up before it starts firing these energy shots at a high fire rate. And the Nuke weapon is a great unlockable bonus that allows you to destroy almost every enemy within a scene. The only weapon I don't like is the Cerebral Bore, which is normally a favorite for people who play this game. For me, it's a little troublesome to lock onto enemies, and the amount of time the weapon takes to kill an enemy is a little too long for me. I'm more of an instant satisfaction type of player. Still, I appreciate the level of detail that went into both the design of the weapon and how the bore it shoots drills into the heads of enemies as their brains gush out in this brown liquid and splashes onto the ground. I also love the level design of this game a lot. Iguana manages to use the whole space within a scene. The player walks through the entirety of the map, sometimes going in a circle without them even realizing it. I also like the cheats within Turok 2 a lot. Things like Big Head Mode have been around for a while, and are in most video games with cheats. But cheats like Stick Mode, Guard Mode, Pen and Ink Mode, and Dark City actively change how you look and play the game. Like, with Dark City, you can't see like 2 feet in front of you because of how dark the lighting is. And I think the stick mode changes the colliders on enemies so that it makes them harder to hit. But by a far margin, I think Fruity Stripes is the coolest cheat/extra in a video game. What this cheat does is that it changes the textures in Turok 2 so that they have the hue rainbow spectrum overlaid on top of them. But what makes this so cool is that you get it pretty early on in the game, and for most of this game, you can run through this rainbow wonderland if you like. I feel like this is something that games like Uncharted 4 fail at with their cheats. Specifically, that game waited for you to beat the entire story before you got access to that game's rainbow overlay cheat. It's definitely far more cooler if you can run through the entire game with the rainbow on your first playthrough. But focusing back to the game, I also really like the gore and death animations. These animations in Turok 2 are some of the most satisfying effects of this type I've seen in a video game, even to this day. If you land a shot just right, you'll just see an explosion of blood, and whatever appendage was there is just gone. In some of these death animations, you can see things like rib cages or spines. It's just so cool. Now, Turok 2 used to be my favorite video game of all time, no question. But at this point in my life, I've definitely played video games that trump this one for me. I can't even say that Turok 2 is flawless at this point. For example, there were some new flaws that I had noticed within the game this time around, mainly relating to the textures. Some textures are stretched on some of the walls, and there are some noticeable seams in the textures that I didn't know were there before. Now, for me, it's really cool to see these kinds of flaws so out in the open, because it means a game can still be great and loved, even with visible abnormalities. Plus, these texture problems are things that I struggle with when I need to model something for a project. Now, I should note that the version of Turok that I had revisited was not the 1998 original, but is the Nightdive Studios remake that came out in 2017. Nightdive's additions and edits to the game here are pretty great. I love that they made portions of the game more linear. Players getting lost in Turok 2 was a common complaint that I had saw, so it's great that they had addressed that through these changes in the level designs. I also think that the higher and more consistent frame rate also makes this remake even better than the 1998 original. The original game needed the Nintendo 64 expansion pack, which gave games more RAM to work with. But even then, the original Turok 2 still had some pretty severe frame rate problems. The way the looking used to work was also a detriment in the original. The Nintendo 64 controller isn't great, especially with first-person shooters. To get around this, Iguana used something called Spring Look, which would automatically recenter your vertical head position when you let go of the analog stick. This made aiming in the game awkward to execute, so I'm glad that Turok 2 is now out on modern systems where the now standard dual stick layout, or a mouse if you're playing on PC, makes for better play. The touches to the menus are also a welcome addition. I like that you can quick save and warp to save points now. That addition streamlines the game in a great way that doesn't disrupt the flow at all. In fact, some of Nightdive's additions might be too good. For example, I always end up skipping some mission objectives by mistake, because I think Nightdive made the game, or Joshua Fireseed, the protagonist's, movement much faster in this remake. So I whiz on by and get lost in the action, and completely miss things by accident. But I also wish Nightdive went a little further, and improved a few more things. For example, I wish they tweaked the Whispering Winds Talisman power so that either Joshua moved faster or he could at least shoot during the power's duration. There is one instance in the game where an enemy is shooting at you as you slowly and helplessly glide through the air. I also wish they added a few more animation items to the spawning pools, which are these areas where you can replenish your health and ammunition. One example on how they could have improved these is the box of explosive shells that is actually featured in Dinosaur Hunter. That would have helped ammunition replenishment go by a lot faster in this game. I also think the illustration they use for Joshua's life counter looks a bit silly as well. Now, I won't give Turok 2 a number score because I have nostalgic bias for this game. I had mentioned that in my top games video as well. I have fond memories of this game from when I was very young. You see, when I was younger, I had played Turok Dinosaur Hunter 2's predecessor first. But what I really remember was being glued to the screen as my dad would run through that game. So, when me, my brother, and my dad saw this game in a store, we bought it immediately. I remember being so excited about playing this game that my brother and I would run up and down the hallway telling our dad that this game had a story with cutscenes. We were so excited just by the aspect of that. My dad would get pretty far in this game. He would beat levels 1 through 3, then 5, then try to tackle 4, but would get stuck because of how Iguana designed the level and mission objectives in the original. It used to be that you would have to go through this pretty dark underwater maze to find one of these objectives. The dated graphics, combined with the dark underwater overlay the designers used, made it so that it would be pretty easy to miss things in this specific portion of the game. Luckily, Nightdive fixed this part of the game too. It's not much of a maze now, and the environments are so much brighter. But one day, I really wanted to play the game for myself. I was young and new at gaming at the time, so I didn't understand things like game saves and limited save space. So, when I went to make a new game so I could play from the beginning, I accidentally deleted my dad's save at the time. A quick note, the Nintendo 64 doesn't have built-in save storage, so you need a save pack that you would plug into the controller to save certain games. Turok 2 was one of these games that required a save pack. In fact, it will not let you play until you have inserted one into your controller. So once my dad went to pick up his game and saw that his save was deleted, I think he might have been mad or sad or both. I can't really remember, but he hasn't really played games like he used to since then. I think I might have ruined a favorite pastime of his, and I still feel pretty guilty about it. But after watching H Bomber Guy's recent video about his experience and thoughts on the Transformers film, I started asking myself why I revisit Turok 2 so much, outside of its mechanics. Because I know this game is flawed, I know where everything is, and the game doesn't have anything close to a through line or a story to revisit. And so I think the answer is that, in some weird way, it's because I love my dad, and I relish the moments spent watching him play this game and getting me into gaming. I brought up my most recent playthrough of Turok 2 when my dad came home on April Fool's night, and his face, it lit up. "I love Turok," was literally the first thing he said. I think it's that reaction that inspires me to study and practice game design. I love how happy video games make people, and I like hearing about what people have to say about the games they play. I had said earlier that I had played this game when I was young, but got into this game more when I was a little older. It must be about 4 or 5 years ago now at this point, when I picked up and replayed a lot of my favorite Nintendo 64 games. And that included Turok 2 and Turok Dinosaur Hunter. At that time, it was like I had rediscovered them all over again. I had remembered why I loved these games so much. That time was also the first time that I had beat this game without using cheats. But, it's not like I wasn't playing the game between my younger and older years. It seems like no matter what point of my life you look at, Turok has always been there, and I've always been playing it. So, while Turok 2 Seeds of Evil isn't the best game you'll ever play, or the most well put together game, for me, I share a special bond with this piece of software. I always make time to replay it, and even talk about it. I love this game so much. My first public speaking assignment in college was a persuasive piece on why someone should play this game. So, I really hope people buy this game. Whether it be on PC or the upcoming port to the Nintendo Switch, it'd be nice to hear opinions of this game from players who didn't grow up with it, or in the era this game came out in. So, please, I'd love to hear your opinions on Turok 2. Please pick up this game. I wouldn't have made an entire video on the game if I didn't think you would enjoy it. And so that concludes my revisiting thoughts on Turok 2. That's it. Have a nice day.